As far as market segment goes, the subcompact crossover segment is very competitive. We've got nameplates like the Hyundai Kona, Kia Seltos, Chevy Trailblazer, Honda HR-V, Toyota Corolla Cross, Mazda CX-30, the list goes on. Today we have something from Europe. This is the newly refreshed 2025 Volkswagen Taos. Let's check it out and see how it competes with its competitors. So, first of all, the Taos is divided into three main trims: Trendline, Comfortline, and Highline. The base Trendline comes in either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive configuration. The Comfortline comes in two editions, the Normal Edition and the Black Edition. And then we have this one. This is the fully loaded Highline. The base Trendline with the front-wheel drive starts at about 32,000 Canadian dollars, but as tested, this top trim Highline is gonna set you back about 42 grand. So, what are the main changes for this facelift? The big one is what's under the hood. You now get more power and the removal of the dual clutch transmission, which means that from this 1.5 liter Miller cycle turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine, you now get 174 horsepower instead of 158. Torque figure remains the same at 184 pound-feet of torque, and you can access the torque from 1750 RPM all the way to 4000 RPM. Power is routed through an 8-speed automatic transmission, which is a traditional torque converter transmission, instead of, as I mentioned, the 7-speed dual clutch transmission, and power goes to all four wheels except the base Trendline model. As for the exterior, it's also been updated. The new front fascia now features new headlights and a much larger lower grille. It looks pretty nice, I think. It's a welcome change. LED headlights come standard, but these are upgraded IQ lights, which are adaptive. The higher trims also get daytime running lights that go all the way across, which is for sure a nice touch. This eye-catching green color is also new for this year. They call it the Serrano Green Metallic. Would you spec your Taos in this color, or do you think it's a little too bold? Let me know down in the comments below. Aside from that, you also get some roof rails and also keyless entry on the front door. The Highline comes standard with 18-inch rims, but these are upgraded 19s and they're paired with 235 wide tires. In terms of suspension, you get McPherson struts in the front and a multi-link setup in the rear. But if you get the front-wheel drive version, the rear suspension will be torsion beam instead. As part of the facelift, you also get a new taillight designs. Now the taillight stretches across the entire width of the car, and you also get an illuminated VW logo. What I like about this logo is that during the day it looks chrome like normal, and at night it lights up. You can't even tell that it lights up during the day. Aside from that, the rest of the rear end looks very similar to the pre-refresh model. You get some logos, badgings over here, and some parking sensors, as well as these trapezoids that look like exhaust pipes but aren't. Opening up the trunk, you get a pretty generous amount of space, about 700 liters of cargo space with the seats folded up, and an extra 1,000 liters when you do fold down the seats. The seats fold down 60-40 split, and you also get a central pass-through, which is nice. You don't get any buttons over here to fold down the seats conveniently. You have to go over to the side, but I think that's okay. Unfortunately, what's not okay is the fact that you don't get an option for a power tailgate. I think that's a miss. You just can't get this feature at all on any Taos. Sitting inside the Taos Highline, you get a two-tone leather interior. This one is black and gray. You also have the option to get a black and blue interior depending on your exterior color option. For context, the base Trendline trim gets cloth seats, the Comfortline gets leatherette seats, and this top trim Highline gets leather seats. Space-wise, it's great back here. It also feels very roomy because of the huge panoramic sunroof. You also get some air vents in the center here, which is nice, but unfortunately, the door panel on the rear doors are hard plastic. You also cannot recline the seats, which isn't great, and the transmission tunnel in the middle is pretty high. So if you have long trips, whoever's sitting in the middle might not have the best time. Up front, the dash design is a little bit different compared to the pre-refreshed model. The screen is now placed a little higher and the climate control is all just one big piece of touch panel. I'm not a huge fan of these touch capacitive buttons. I think if they could have added some vibrations or haptics, that would be nice. I think that would allow me to know better what I'm touching, give me some feedback, but it is what it is. To their defense, they did add some slots and grooves so that I can feel where I'm touching even if I'm not looking, if I'm familiar with the car. The screen itself is an 8-inch unit. This is standard across the board. Functionality wise, it's good, it's snappy enough. It also has support for wireless Android Auto and wireless Apple CarPlay, but the wireless thing is only applicable to the higher trims. The lower trims, you still have to plug them in, so that's a little bit of a minor inconvenience. I do wish that the screen is a little bit larger because if you look at the competitors, say the Hyundai Kona, it comes standard with a 12-inch screen that supports wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto as standard. So a little bit of room for improvement here for Volkswagen. Moving over to the cockpit side, the cluster is fully digital. It's a 10-inch screen. There's a ton of customization. It also shows plenty of information, which is great. When you do display the map, you can zoom in and out of the map within the cluster itself, which is great. For some reason, most of the other cars that do show the map in the middle of the cluster, you cannot zoom in and out. Steering wheel, all physical buttons, love that. It's great. I'm glad that Volkswagen is moving back to physical button steering wheels, unlike what you get in the Golf R still. As for amenities, you get heated and cooled front seats, heated steering wheel, but unfortunately no heated seats in the back. Wireless charger down here, a couple cup holders, and a pretty deep center console, which is nice. Seats themselves are powered for the driver and manual adjustments for the passenger, but the great thing is that even the passenger has height adjustability, which if you look at the competitors, most of them don't offer that feature, so it's nice to have. While I'm at it, I also want to say that I'm a huge fan of Volkswagen seat patterns, from the plaid design to these two-tones. They just do a good job. So what's great about the Taos is that you get this turbo engine on all trims, unlike the competitors from Korea and Japan, where you get a relatively weak 2-liter naturally aspirated engine as base. You also reach peak torque at 1750 RPM, and thanks to the variable geometry turbo, it goes all the way, it stays at peak torque all the way until 4000 RPM. So the powertrain is actually fairly robust. Although the dual clutch transmission is inherently more efficient compared to a torque converter automatic, a lot of people complain that it was a little jerky in the pre-refresh model, so I think that's mainly why Volkswagen has brought back a more traditional torque converter transmission in this model. Now, it's definitely not as responsive as a dual clutch, but it absolutely is smooth. If you want to get the most out of this transmission, you can also pull this gear lever down and put it into S mode, and it really actually holds your gear quite a bit, so it's not bad. The tuning is decent. So what about fuel economy? On the highway, I was able to manage 6.5, 7 liter per 100 kilometers, and in the city, it hovers around the 9 liter mark if I drive it smooth and calmly. If you want better fuel economy, you can consider getting the front-wheel drive version, because that has a rated combined fuel economy of 7.4 liters per 100 kilometers, whereas this all-wheel drive version has a rated combined fuel economy of 8.4 liters. It would also be nice if Volkswagen decide to, in the future, maybe bring in some hybrid powertrain to the Taos lineup. Now, in terms of ride quality, I would say that this Taos is in typical German fashion, that is a little bit firmer compared to its competitor. It's a little bit firmer, but it's definitely still comfortable. Handling wise, it obviously doesn't drive like a Golf R, but it doesn't, of course, need to. I think it does a good enough job. Steering is a little vague on center, but for the most part, it's good enough. At the end of the day, this is a point A to point B vehicle, good enough to take you to work, good enough to take you grocery shopping, good enough to pick up the kids. So what more can you want? Speaking of kids, perfect segue into safety features. The Taos comes standard with emergency braking, blind spot warning, adaptive cruise control, lane centering, and lane keep assist. If you go with the Comfort line or the Highline like we have here, you also get parking sensors. Both the adaptive cruise control and lane centering works well on the highway, so there's really not much for me to complain about. Overall, I think the 2025 Taos look nice from the outside and on the inside, but it's missing a couple important features in my books. For instance, the lack of a power tailgate, that's a miss, and also on this top trim, it doesn't have a higher tier or higher end sound system, which I also think is a miss. It only has a non-branded 6-speaker system, which branding is not an issue, it's just it sounds a little mediocre. Personally, I think this Highline top trim is a little bit pricey given the feature list, but on the other hand, the Comfort line at about 37,000 Canadian dollars after deliveries is a very good value for money because you get most of the feature, I guess, missing the sunroof and a couple minor features, but I think that is the trim to get. Anyway, what do you guys think? What do you think about the refreshes that Volkswagen has implemented on this new Taos? Would you pick this over its Japanese and Korean competitors, or if you would go for something like a Trailblazer? Let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.